Welcome to the Illuminate Universe podcast, The Cast. Get it? The Cast? My name is Alina, and I'm the founder of Illuminate, where we mentor job seekers and help employers to fast-track their business goals. I interview a celebrity cast of incredible individuals who have truly inspiring careers. We're talking about their work journey, the process of taking the leap to create a life and career they truly love, and what happens when they push aside their fears and doubts to unleash their fullest potential. Today, we speak with Austin Teshuba, who has landed a career with Google as an associate product manager. Austin graduates with a double degree in engineering and business from Western University. Today, Austin will share how he landed his job at Google and as well as how he got his internship at Google in grade 12. Hi, Austin. Welcome to the show today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
I'm so excited to share your story with our audience. Austin, I think I know a bit more about you than our audience who are going to find out more about you from this podcast. But every time we talk, I feel like there's new wisdom and just new knowledge that I can get from our conversations. I'm super excited to dive right in.
Oh, I really appreciate it. I'm excited to chat with you again as well. And let's dive right in.
Awesome. All right. So Austin, tell us about where everything started. Tell us about how your post-secondary experiences led you to where you are today.
I think that's a really great question. I feel like the journey for me is a lot more fortunate and lucky than others in the sense that I feel like I found my passion really early. For me, I remember going into grade 10, actually, I was picking my courses. I had 3 electives. I knew I wanted to take business. I knew I wanted to take French, and I didn't know what to do with the third one. And I was talking to my parents, and I was like, I think I'm going to take computer science, but I'm really afraid of computer science. I'm afraid of coding. I don't want it to be like binary, like ones and zeros, and be like, I'm a social person. Like, I like people. I like collaboration. I don't want to be so like in the numbers, in the weeds. And my parents were like, you've been working with computers and like enjoying computers since you were like a baby. Like, try the course. And if you hate it, drop it. It's fine. You can move on. And for me, taking the computer science course was that first prototype into whether computing would be a path that I would want to go down. Within about 2 weeks, we were learning about HTML. We were learning about building our first web page. And I remember like clicking run on like the first little skeleton web page I ever made. And I never knew technology could combine like math and value for businesses and creativity in such an interesting way. And I immediately fell in love with technology. I knew I liked business. And then I also knew like technology connects with business so well in the sense that technology fuels a lot of these new strategies that allow businesses to grow and serve their customers. So I also saw business as a fit alongside technology. Starting the year after, I kept taking computer science classes and computer engineering classes. I went to Ivy's summer leadership program after grade 11. The program's unfortunately discontinued, but in that program, I first got exposed to interdisciplinary learning. Like, we were with whole bunch of students from different backgrounds, different interests. I remember one of my peers was making balloons to send to space with NASA. And that's where I was like, whoa, business is this general world where I can combine technology and do anything. And I just felt this inspiration to continue. And I know it sounds cheesy, I know it sounds corny, but that's really where it all started. That's what led me towards business and software engineering at Western and Ivy, specifically because it's the only school, at least at the time, maybe that's changed, the only school that lets you do both degrees at the same time. I ended up going back to the Ivy Summer Leadership Program as an instructor. At that program, I met Deloitte, which was a sponsor of the program, where they were talking about design thinking and building for users rather than building solutions and trying to fit them to users. And that really spoke to me. So I started speaking to the Deloitters there and trying to understand the way that they do things. And they practically hired me on the spot. Like, I basically had no real interview process. My one interview ended in an office tour of the Toronto building. I then did my first internship there. I learned a ton about software development and building software. After that internship, I applied to Google with the help of a referral from one of the peers I met my first year of university. We were working on computer science projects together, and he got his first internship at Google and put in a good word. And then I started as a step intern at Google, and I've been there practically ever since, working on different teams and different projects. I started working on Google Stadia, which is unfortunately now discontinued, but a great team with great folks on it. Moved into a software development role on Google Play. And then after that, a Google APM internship, which is a product management internship, which brings back that business piece of figuring out where technology fits into solving users' problems rather than just focusing on building the technology itself. I was a APM intern on Fitbit, which was Google's 5th largest acquisition. And now I'll be returning to Google. And I'm sorry that I just babbled and rambled, but that's my story. And it's strangely linear, and it strangely feels meant to be. And that's why I want to say I feel very lucky and fortunate, because I know that's not how every story works out. And I think it's totally natural if it doesn't work out that way. But that's how it worked out for me.
Also to mention, you are extremely capable. You're smart in terms of knowledge, you're good with people. And I don't think it's just you're fortunate. I think, Austin, you got yourself there, and I've worked with you before. And, there are moments when I look at you and I'm just thinking, how does Austin's brain work? Like, it's hard for me to comprehend, but it's spectacular. Also, this is totally random. So what happened to those balloons?
Oh, they were entered into competitions, and they were meant to take like atmospheric metrics, weather. I don't fully remember the details because I was not the one sending the balloons to space. I'm definitely not that smart. But he ended up coming to Western in business and software engineering alongside me, actually. We are in many of the same classes now. He started a club at Western to continue sending balloons to space and balloons to like the stratosphere to collect data basically on behalf of the scientific community. And it went really well. So it ended up being his little like side passion / hobby, which helped him, I think, build an interest in engineering and software, which got him into the technical roles he's at today.
Oftentimes I think it's these little side projects, these passion projects that really stays with us throughout our career. I mean, for Illuminate, it was just a passion project, and look at where we are today, right? And I always emphasize this. Illuminate is a community, and it is here today because of yourself, because of the people who stood behind the mission, the values that we've built this together, which is phenomenal. Now I want to go back to our mutual connection, Gord Sanford, who gave you the golden ticket, which is referring to the story that you talked about where Deloitte just hired you on the spot at the Ivy Summer Leadership Camp, right? I briefly recall this story, but can you walk our audience through, how exactly did you get that offer? How did you win over Gord?
How did I win over Gord? I think now knowing Gord, I was speaking his love language. There's a professional world. I didn't know it at the time, but I think I was saying all the right things. For me, it was completely out of genuine interest. Like, I was in grade 12. I didn't even know I could get a professional job. I didn't even know to the extent like software developers and computer science was like a hot field. I honestly thought I was just going into a degree to explore my passion, like many other people felt when they were entering university. I was completely going into it for pure reasons. So when I was at this workshop where he was talking about design thinking and the power of emerging technology, but the fact that using just emerging technology doesn't mean anything. We need to make sure that we're using emerging technology in a way that connects to real users and solves their problems, where we start with the problem and then figure out what technology can solve it, rather than look at the technology and try to fit it to a user in some weird way. That was a mental shift for me, how I looked at technology, how I looked at code, and it sparked a conversation. I remember going up to him and saying, that's a really great way of looking at problem solving and using technology to do it. I've always been going to hackathons my whole life. And I remember walking into hackathons thinking, I'm going to use this language and this API and this framework. And I had a lot of fun doing it. I loved coding. I loved tinkering. I loved building. But I'd often sit there and wonder, like, how am I going to use this technology? How am I going to solve a problem? And I often felt restricted because I said I was going to use this technology. I said I was going to use this framework, rather than saying I'm going to solve a problem and use the right technology to get there. And he said, yeah, that's exactly how we do things at Deloitte. We started talking a little bit more about hackathons. We started talking about my experiences like on Coursera doing external specializations. I remember I was really interested in this algorithm specialization being offered by Stanford. We were talking a little bit about that. I talked about my desire to do lifelong learning. I ended up like inadvertently, without using those words, talking about how I love school and I love learning and I want to be in school forever. And I'm going to do an undergrad and then a master's and then another master's and just keep learning in any way I can. Turns out he's like the lifelong learning champion of Deloitte and was the founder of Deloitte Digital, coming from a non-technical background, but teaching himself technical skills. So a lot of the things I said just resonated with him. And he said, we got to get you talking to Tim Hopkins. Tim Hopkins was the partner of front-end engineering in the Deloitte Digital department. He was incredible. I met Tim Hopkins. We built a pretty strong connection as well. And that's the story. There was no, it's funny because I think I submitted my resume after I knew I had the offer, where it was completely based on the experiences that we had, like the connection that we made essentially through this.
You know what's funny is Tim, I've actually met Tim before, and he comes from a law background.
Yep.
Right. So I think the story of Gord, yourself, and Tim, it all speaks to thinking outside of the box, right? And necessarily, I don't think our education, it has a correlation in terms of what we do with our career, but it doesn't necessarily translate 100% into what you pursue.
Yep. Completely.
So what tips do you have for individuals to develop the skills they need outside of the traditional educational route to dive into their dream career?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And building skills outside of a formal education setting, I mean, I guess I can't speak to, this point I'm about to make, but eventually school ends and it becomes your only means of building new skills. Like you leave your undergraduate and you're not going to be in formal education anymore. So how do you keep learning? How do you stay up to date? So whether you're in education, just looking to differentiate yourself, or learn something new, or just stay curious, which is often where I found myself over the last 5-6 years, or you're about to be me in 1 year and graduated and out of school and want to learn something new and stay up to date, it's really critical to make sure you know how to learn. I think if the step one is to know your learning style. I know for me, I hate reading. I don't like books. I don't follow written stories too well. I love listening to people and I love courses for that reason. And there's plenty of great online sources that will like have high quality instructional videos that you can learn off of. Udemy is great. Coursera is great. Those are two go-tos that I always have. I'm actually about to start a Coursera certificate in the next week or so in UX design, which I'm really excited for. And I guess another source as well is checking in with peers in the industries that you're interested in to see where they learned. Because there's so many courses, there's so many sources, there's so many things online where it's like, okay, if you search up a React course, you're going to get 10,000 results from YouTube, Udemy, Coursera, you name it, anything, books, podcasts, however you like to learn. But some of those courses are good and some of those courses are less good. So it's worthwhile talking to people in the industries that you're interested in to say, hey, I noticed that you come from a non-technical background and you ended up in tech. How did you make that switch? What resources did you use? And how did you learn how to get here? And oftentimes they'll have great suggestions. So that's my overall tips and tricks. Know your learning style, find the sources that cater to that learning style, and reach out to people in the industries that you're interested in to find reputable sources to help you learn the skills you need.
So tell us about, we know you got a referral from Google, from your friend who also interned at Google, but what were the specific strategic steps that you took that ultimately landed you the offer?
That's a really great question. I think first was building a genuine connection. Like when I built the connection with Charlie, who is the person who referred me to Google, I didn't need the referral. I didn't know where it was going to lead. I didn't know he was working at Google. I didn't think I want to get a job at Google. I thought, I want to help you finish a computer science assignment and you want to help, you need a little bit of tips and tricks. And I want to learn more about what you're learning. So we just built this natural relationship. And often the stories you'll hear about like connections, it's best to network when you don't need it because it's just more genuine. It's more authentic. And often, even if you don't get anything professional out of it, it's good to put goodness into the world. And I believe that it'll come back to you. So for me, the step one was having a genuine relationship with Charlie. And then he reached out to me, giving this opportunity to, apply for a referral to Google. At this point, I was really confident I was going to return to Deloitte. I did not want to explore opportunities too much outside of Deloitte. I didn't want to deal with the technical interview process. but I took advantage of it. I jumped on it. I wrote a really thoughtful application that I thought would stand out and reflect my true experiences. I remember they had a series of essays talking about the way I found computer science, what computer science means to me, the courses I've taken, et cetera, et cetera. I remember putting a lot of time into that. I also reached out to a peer of mine that I knew worked at Google full time, other than Charlie, to ask him about his interview process. So a lot of discovery before I submitted the application. And then once I got the first round interview, I ended up doing a lot of preparation, mainly through something called LeetCode. If you're going for software engineering interviews, you'll hear that source a lot. LeetCode is a program where essentially you can learn how to solve algorithmic problems or coding problems. That helped me prepare for the technical portions of the interview. I passed 2 rounds of technicals and I got the offer. And that's the story.
How do you leave an impression that matters?
I think for me, the key of leaving an impression that matters is having a genuine curiosity to learn about that other person, to learn about their experiences, to learn about what they're interested in. I think a lot of people walk into connections thinking they need to sell themselves. And I think that's true to some extent. You don't want to downplay the things you've done. You know, you've worked hard, you have interests, you've put all your energy into this mission, this path. Yeah, of course, you should be happy and confident in that. But it isn't an interview per se. When you're meeting somebody, your goal should be to learn as much about them as possible. And then you'll end up reaching these areas of conversation that you find really interesting, that connect to what you are interested in. So for me, when I was meeting Gord, he was talking about his experiences at Hack the North. And he was talking about his experiences talking with students who are building different projects. And that gave me the opportunity to say, oh, I love hackathons. I go all the time. I unfortunately didn't get the chance to go to Hack the North, but I do a lot of hackathons in Windsor and at the University of Michigan, and talking about the differences there. You can build these connections off of genuine interest and genuine curiosity. And I think that's how you make it memorable, rather than just another person that needs someone for some specific purpose.
And I actually think sometimes in an interview, the less we talk, the more we hold space for the other person to share and to also make that connection between the two individuals, the better it is, actually. The more they talk versus the more we talk as an interviewee.
Yeah, exactly. I think when you let the other person speak, especially if they have a way that they want to steer the conversation, which is often the case with an interview, it gives them the chance to course correct. It gives them the chance to, also put out feelers, also build that natural connection. Because when somebody's interviewing somebody too, they're also often curious about you. They want to know your experiences. They want to know your backgrounds and skills. That's why you're in an interview. They're there to learn about you as much as you want to learn about them and the company, et cetera. It needs to be both ways. And in order for it to be both ways, you do have to give that space, and you do have to listen just as much as you speak.
Absolutely, 100%. Sometimes when how I got my Deloitte job offer. It was because I actually didn't know how to do a case study.
Oh, really?
I was given a golden ticket like yourself, a hackathon. So for you, it was the Ivy Summer Leadership Program, right? For me,
yes.
it was called She Hacks
at
York University. So Ishani, she was a consultant actually, but she's probably one of the best consultants at the time within Deloitte Digital. And she gave me a golden ticket because I built a chatbot. I didn't build it. Let me just clarify that. I didn't build it, but I talked about it. And I actually built it with a Deloitte engineer. So I didn't have any teammates. I was working with a Deloitte mentor who was a Deloitte engineer, and he built the chatbot with me. And then I just presented it.
That's so cool. What a great opportunity to have at a hackathon too. Like, really big props to Deloitte and our outreach efforts for that one as well. That's awesome. Like, I would love to build alongside a company before I even work there. That's so cool and great for you. Oh my gosh. I think a lot of people shy away from technology, and you don't seem to be afraid of it at all. So that's awesome.
Well, at that point, I really didn't know anything about technology. And I was like, well, I'm at a hackathon, so I can either pretend like I know about technology, or I pretend, or I don't pretend, and I just act like a fool. So I took the other route. And so what happened was I got my golden ticket, I proceeded straight to the final round, like yourself, and I didn't know how to do a case study. So the partner walked into the room, opened up the folder, and just said, "Hey, tell me more about yourself." And from there, my strategy was I would ask him as many questions about himself as possible. So he would talk the whole way through, and then we didn't have any time to do the case study. That was my strategy, and it worked. It worked. And I got my offer. I was praying, hoping that I would not have to do the business case study. And I think this experience, like the ones that you shared, really emphasizes the importance of building connection and using interpersonal skills to bring you to that next level. Sometimes, hard skills like coding is very, very important, right? But what gets you into the door is sometimes the soft skills, communications, and the people skills, building that connection. So I completely agree. So my last question for you, Austin, can you share a piece of advice with students or young adult learners who are trying to obtain their dream job this upcoming recruitment season?
My main piece of advice, I'm going to steal one from your playbook, actually, because I think it's excellent advice. Don't pretend. Like, I think a lot of us walk into a goal, any goal, whether that be learning a skill or, going after your dream job in this specific instance, and they think they know how to do it, how to draft the right resume, how to make the perfect cover letter, how to network into the organization, how to navigate the interviews. The truth is, you might not know those things. And basically everybody who has had that job at one point also didn't know how to do any of those things. And it is in your 100% best interest not to pretend. If you don't know how to do the resume, ask. That's a great thing to talk about in a networking session or a one-on-one call, or perhaps with like a career advisor or a peer mentor. If you don't know how to prepare for interviews, reach out to on-campus organizations, reach out to professional connections. People are more inclined to help if you're honest and say, I just want to learn. Like, I don't know, and I think you do know. And it would be really great to learn from you specifically, because I think you have the skills and the background that looks a lot like mine did way back when in your career. So please, can you help me? 9 out of 10 times, I think you'll get a yes from that person. And not only will you learn the skills that you need, you'll also build a valuable connection, a genuine connection, because you did need to learn. You did actually need some kind of advice or information. For me, when I was switching into product management, it was the same thing. Like, I had lots of experience in SWE, in software engineering, we call it SWE, but moving into product management is a completely different ballgame. I had to redo my resume 4 times. I was working with a peer mentor within Google, outside of Google, to figure out, like, what are product management interviews? What does your job look like? What does making a resume for product management look like? Do they care about the types of programming languages I'm using? Do they care about the specific technical requirements of all the project I'm working on? The answer to both of the things was no. And my world was flipped upside down, because that's all software engineers usually care about. And, I had to learn. And I think that's my advice is stay humble and stay honest, in the sense that if you don't know something, you just don't have to pretend.
I love it. All right. So tell us about product management, the world of product management. What is it exactly?
I think it's a great question. I also think sometimes it can be a frustrating question to ask, to be honest, because you'll often get different answers from different people. So I'm going to give you my answer, and it might be different than other people's. And I don't think that means the other person's wrong or I'm wrong. I think it's just different perspectives on the role. I come from a technical background, so I'm going to give you more of a technical answer. Software engineers focus on building a software system. They're given the requirements, they're given the specifications, they're given maybe loose technical bounds, but overall their goal is to build it. And they know exactly what the end goal is. Product managers figure out what that end goal is and why that end goal matters. So rather than focusing on how the technology is built, product managers take a step back and say, why are we building what we're building? What is the purpose of this software? How will it fit in the market? What is the benefits of this software? And product management really makes sure that you're not wasting the team's time. It also really makes sure that you're building great products that people really love. So, for example, when people think of Google search, they'll often think of the engineering prowess. Like, that is an incredible piece of software that was created that helps millions of people. but they might not think about the problem it solves and the customers that it benefits and how they've arrived to, hey, Google search needs to exist. And that piece of, hey, Google piece needs to exist, that's product management, alongside making sure it's built to actually meet the customer problem along the way.
I'm a big fan of women in STEM. And my first internship was actually a product management internship at IBM. And I struggled a lot because on that floor, there was probably 3 women and 100 men. So this might be a question. I'm not sure if you would be able to answer this, but I would love to hear your thoughts regardless, Austin. Is any tips and advice for women who are going into the product management field where the majority of, engineers are predominantly male?
Yeah, I think it's such a difficult question, but such an important question. My advice would be, if you love technology and you think you're interested in it, try your best to push through the intimidation, push through that fear of, I don't belong here, and recognize that the people who say or perpetuate that you don't belong are completely incorrect. And the perception that you don't belong is also not correct. Technology is, especially the technology industry, is about ideas. Always. That's why we show up to the office wearing t-shirts and whatever we want. We show up to the office at whatever hours we really would prefer, as long as it doesn't, mess up somebody else's schedule. You see people from all walks of life. And the reason is, in technology, ideas matter. The product matters. Value matters. Your background, where you're coming from, try your best to not let those be barriers. Now, I don't want to say that there aren't barriers for women in tech. That isn't true at all. There are barriers. There's cultural differences within different companies, which could make it even worse. There's a lack of representation. There's a lack of role models for young women who are looking in to enter the industry. And those are problems that just need to be fixed at the industry level, at the company level. But try your best to push through, find female role models, look for companies that have a somewhat equal representation of men and women in some way in the technical space. Try your best to focus on learning and focus on becoming the best technical master you can, and build those skills, and you'll do great. Like the tech world wants more women. We want more representation. We want more diversity. This is coming from a white man. So I also recognize that, like, this is possibly the worst person to talk to about diversity from like how it feels or like how it can help it. I'd like to think that the tech culture is trying to improve on this vastly. And I'd hope that the barriers to preventing women into going in STEM aren't so insurmountable that it prevents women from entering the field, because I think that's just such a shame.
Wow. Wow. So let's end this podcast on the inspirational and empowering note here. Austin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom today. Our audience will have lots to take in, and I'm so excited to share this with our audience and to also showcase you as an Illuminate alum and to work together in the near future. Thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you very much for having me.